Well, welcome back to the program. We're discussing the turmoil in Yemen after the Houthis' takeover of the Middle Eastern country. We're continuing our discussion with Osman Bakhach, a Middle East politics expert. He joins us from Beirut. Baraa Shiban is a Yemeni human rights activist who joins us from London. And here on set is Sama'a Al-Hamdani, a Yemeni humanitarian and political analyst. She joins us, as I said, here in the studio. Thanks to all of you again for joining us. Sama'a, let me start with you. What is the security situation in Yemen right now? I mean, it's in a key location. It's in a strategic location for many, many countries, especially the United States. It lies right there in the Gulf. This instability that it's facing right now, I mean, how would it be viewed by countries like the United States?
So they're worried. You know, the U.S. Embassy, the French Embassy, the British Embassy, a number of other embassies withdrew from Yemen as soon as the Houthis took over the city. Not in September when they first took over the city, but in January after they put the president under house arrest. So it seems that the message that the international community was sending is that we don't accept the Houthi intervention in Yemen. The Houthi rebel movement decided to announce a presidential decree, which only the president has the right to do that. They called it a constitutional decree where they dissolved the parliament and came up with a transitional plan. This has since changed. So President Hadi escaped from Sana'a to Aden. But to look at what the international community is doing, a lot of them have taken a step back and said that we do not stand for this. Our main ally and the person that we recognize to be in power is President Hadi and not the Houthi rebel movement.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, did these embassies close in opposition to stage a protest against the Houthi takeover, or are they really worried about their own safety?
So I think what happened is that the Houthi group managed to take control of the security forces, and they were able to take control of the majority of the National Security Bureau and the political security organization. So I think overnight, I think these embassies realized that the Houthis know a lot more than they need to know. The airport, Sana'a airport, has been run by them for a while. And so it seems that they felt that it's safer for them to get out of Yemen. But it's mostly to protest and put pressure on the Houthis, because back then they were going to take control of everything. The revolutionary committees that they have formed were going to take charge of Yemen. Right. So they wanted to force participation. They wanted to put pressure on the Houthis to accept communication with other political parties. Anything moving forward now, anything that's going to have to do with Yemen, all these different political groups, all these political movements on the ground are going to have to participate. They cannot exclude one part or the other. So even though a lot of people protest the Houthis, I think to proceed forward, we cannot just shut them down. They are a force on the ground and have to be part of a transition moving forward.
All right. Osman, looking at the instability in the country right now, I mean, how fertile is the ground for groups like ISIL to move into Yemen, or for a group like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to expand? I mean, as you know, I know you've pointed out that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is a small group, but we know that small groups can cause a lot of chaos.
Small groups can cause some chaos, but bigger groups such as governments of US and UK can cause endless destruction. Let's not all of this at the end. This Qaeda and ISIL, really they are small players when compared against the big players who are America and Britain. They are the ones who drive the policy, not only in Yemen, but across the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf, in Iraq, in Syria. Look at what's happening in Syria. And mind you, within this context, for the same logic, that's what happened recently in Libya. This issue of ISIS beheading the Copts in Libya, and right within hours, the Egyptian Air Force struck targets in Libya. This issue of ISIL, really, it's a Frankenstein, but custom-made. It's a Frankenstein made to American specification. They create this monster to use it as a scarecrow to justify their intervention to achieve their politics. And a matter of fact, one American expert, Zimmerman, she said, and mind you, all you need to do, really, if you go back even yesterday, if you read the report in the Foreign Policy, in the American magazine Foreign Policy, you will see number of American strategists, military leaders, analysts, and all that. One of them, this Zimmerman, she said that the result of the American policy in Yemen, and for that matter in Iraq, who opened the doors for ISIL in Iraq? It just when the so-called Sunni community, when they feel vulnerable, this opened the doors for ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and so on. So Zimmerman is saying the result is that vulnerable Sunni communities in Yemen that had previously kicked out Al-Qaeda were reluctantly allowing Qaeda to return simply because Al-Qaeda is seen as a lesser evil than a Houthi. In other words, she said, while this is a foreign policy, while the United States views the Yemeni government as a counter-terrorism partner, its actions are actually driving up support for Al-Qaeda. So this is the same game. What's happening in Yemen has to be connected to the same scenario in Iraq. Who opened the door for this ISIL in Iraq?
All right,
which came up as a result of the policies by the Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki. And then America steps in and say, oh, now we have a problem we have to resolve, seeking the intervention by Iranian.
All right, I want to go.
All of this chaos, really, it's so-called.
Yeah, I want to go to London and get the view of Baraa on this. One moment, I just want to go to Baraa in London. Baraa, I mean, what do you feel, Baraa, about this destabilization in Yemen? And what is the potential for the wider Middle East to be destabilized by this? As I pointed out, it's a key strategic location that Yemen occupies. It's got Saudi Arabia right next door. It's sitting right there on major shipping lanes. What are the chances of there could be wider conflict?
Well, I think there is definitely going to be a wider conflict if the Houthis continue trying to take over new provinces and new cities. And even if they did control some new areas, actually, they're going to face a long, I would say, a long, exhausting battle in the coming maybe 2 years. I would agree to a certain level that the actual power of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is very limited. The AQAP has failed to expand in the same way as ISIS did in Iraq and Syria. And that's mainly not because of the counterterrorism efforts, but because there is a huge rejection within the Yemeni population for the presence of Al-Qaeda. Many Yemenis do believe that Al-Qaeda have targeted more Yemenis, have killed more Yemenis than they claim that they're targeting Western targets. Yeah. And I think the role of Al-Qaeda has weakened since 2011. 2011 was the only time they actually did control an area, and I think they will not be able to do that after 2011.
Okay, I want to get to
now. There is, of course, a potential threat that the government has destabilized, but I mean, I think eventually the people do actually feel a rejection to the presence of Al-Qaeda.
Okay, Sama'a, I want to get to you because we've only got a minute left. Something that we have not addressed, and that is how this affects normal, ordinary Yemenis in the country, the humanitarian situation right there. We've got some alarming facts here. I mean, Oxfam, which is a major relief organization, says it's a forgotten crisis. You've got the BBC, which is reporting that 10 million Yemenis, that's out of a population of 26 million, are food insecure.
So I think what's happening is that the political actors have completely hijacked everything about Yemen and turned it into a political dialogue. On the ground, Yemen is 25 million people, and I think on the ground we have poverty. We have people who don't have access to clean water. I think about 14 million people don't have access to clean water. A lot of people are displaced right now because of a lot of the internal conflicts that are taking place on the ground. And I think because we're focusing on the political arrangements that we're doing in Yemen, we're forgetting the humanitarian side. But it's not just the world, it's also the Yemeni political players themselves who have so selfishly just disputed and tried to extend these negotiations as long as possible. I think that they forget that there are people on the ground that are hungry and are in need of a functioning government that would deliver services to them. And that's the most important thing.
Of course, and I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to leave it. That's all we have time for. That's it for this edition of The Heat. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and story ideas to theheat@cctv-america.com, and we'd like to continue the conversation on social media. Give us your thoughts and comments on our Facebook page. That's CCTV America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.